Three, two, one. Command has been given. Crank him up.
Let's go. When I say I don't know, I don't know.
Let's go, baby.
Now, the Morning Drive.
Buckle up, everybody.
A little bit of this and a little bit of that.
It's a game changer.
I listen to you guys every single day on my way to work.
Well, again, I'm not a doctor, nor do I play one on the radio.
You guys are amazing.
What are you doing over there?
I'm going to the top.
The Morning Drive with Mike Bagley and Pete Pistone.
To the bat balls.
Sirius XM, NASCAR Radio, Channel 90, live and on the air for this Wednesday morning, May 31st, 2023. Mike Bagley here in Delmarva, Studio 1D. We've got Pistol Pete Pistone in the Paisan Palace in Chicago. We've got Sammy and Davey in Studio 134 of the Beltway Bureau in our nation's capital. We welcome each and every one of you to this Wednesday morning. Happy end of the month of May to you, Triple P.
Well, good morning, Bagman. Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday to one and all. We will say goodbye to the month of May. You are correct. Tomorrow, the 1st of June. And there's only one good thing about having a rain out on a Sunday. When you race on a Monday, we're already halfway home on the work week, pal. How about that?
I don't know what day of the week it is, seriously.
Flying along.
It's flying by. It's flying too fast, as far as I'm concerned. Listen, I've got two races to prepare for this weekend and a day less of prep time. So yesterday, son, I was eyeball deep with Sean Higurani, Trevor Huddleston, Bradley Erickson, Tanner Reif, William Sawalich, getting ready for this ARCA West race, Xfinity race out at Portland. Flying tomorrow at 1:30, I believe, wheels up for Portland International Raceway via Phoenix in Sky Harbors Airport. So,
oh, boy. Oh, wow.
That's going on.
That's quite the route you're going to be making out there to the
Yes.
West Coast and back. Did a little work around here yesterday as well. I will be heading down to Chicago later this morning. We got a press conference here. The NBC crew is going to be in town, and we're going to get some more details about the Chicago Street Circuit race. So I'll look forward to heading down there a little later, and then I'm off to Gateway on Friday. So a busy week. Look forward to it. And the weather is hot, Baggy. Hot, hot, hot. Going to be 90-something here today, I think, in Chicago. And long range for us in St. Louis, those of us who will be down at that race, mid-90s. So pack your shorts.
Well, you some of what the heat that y'all have is going to drift over here in the next day or two.
Going your way.
Problem is, we've got some wildfires burning in New Jersey, and that smoke is coming east.
Wow.
So we've got the smoke coming from the east, we've got the heat coming from the west, and we're stuck right in the middle of all of it.
Nice. Well, that's appropriate because, quite frankly, I think we had a wildfire of a story burning through the NASCAR world yesterday with the news of Chase Elliott's suspension.
And that's where I was going with that. Yes. We had
Beat you
taken
to
a
it.
lot of calls yesterday morning about what was happening when in the aftermath of the Chase Elliott and Denny Hamlin dust-up at Charlotte Motor Speedway and the Coca-Cola 600, and it seems like all of the evidence was reviewed and whatnot, and it was determined that Chase Elliott will be suspended for this weekend's race at Gateway. Your thoughts?
Well, I said yesterday pretty strongly I felt like that was the move that NASCAR needed to make, and NASCAR did make that move. I don't think there was any way around actually not sitting Chase down for a race. When you look at, and I know that everything is not the same, and Elton Sawyer, and we'll let you hear some of the comments that Elton made on the channel yesterday, everything's not exactly the same, but the intent of purposely crashing somebody and wrecking them by hooking them on the right side of the race car on a high-speed racetrack like the one we had at Charlotte Motor Speedway, to me, was the reason for sure that Chase had to be sat down. So I think NASCAR made the right move. I'm sorry for Chase. I'm sorry for Chase Elliott fans. I'm sorry for Hendrick Motorsports. But there has to be a line. There has to be a boundary. And quite frankly, I think Chase went over that boundary, and NASCAR will make him pay the price.
NASCAR Senior VP of Competition Elton Sawyer joined Dave Moody on SiriusXM Speedway to give context to the actual suspension of Chase Elliott.
As we continued last night, early this morning, and throughout the day to gather data, we've arrived at, a one-race suspension for Chase. We take this very seriously in the fact that, the incident that happened off turn 4, again, after looking at all the available resources, in-car camera, data, SMT, which basically gives us steering, gives us throttle, because this braking, it was an intentional act by Chase, in our opinion and our view after reviewing all the available resources there.
Now, one of the first questions to come up from this has been, what about the waiver? Will Chase Elliott be able to apply for a waiver to continue to run for the Cup Series championship?
If you look at prior cases where we have suspended drivers, Johnny Sauter comes to mind, Josh Williams earlier this season, we have granted those waivers. So again, I don't see any reason at this point in time, why we wouldn't do that when that request comes across our desk.
Pete, I want to pause right here. What are your thoughts there? What Elton has had to say so far about the rationale for the suspension, but also the allowance of him to be able to pursue a waiver like others have been that have been in similar situations?
Well, let's start with the first part, and that's the SMT data. We're in a new era now, Mike, where drivers might be able to say one thing, but there's evidence to back up something else. And that's really and truly, I think, going to be my takeaway from this Chase Elliott suspension. Because if you just looked at video, if you just heard what the driver had to say, you might get a different story. And it is a kind of a ball and a strike when you look at some of the video. But when you look at that data, and Denny Hamlin was the first guy to put it out there publicly on Monday, as Elton said, there's no denying what that information shows you the driver was doing behind the wheel of that race car. And really and truly, that was the case closed for me. When you saw that information, the benefit of the doubt goes away from the driver because the driver now has nothing to back himself up on because that information shows what he was doing behind the wheel. So that'd be number one. Number two, with the waiver, I mean, Elton said it. This is, whether you like it or not, this has been the precedent that the sanctioning body has put out there before, that they will give the waiver for someone who's been suspended. Josh Williams got suspended for what happened at Atlanta back in the spring. Last year, Bubba Wallace got suspended for what happened with Kyle Larson, and Bubba was allowed to continue running for the Owners' Championship, remember, for 23-11 last year. So there's no doubt. But I think, Mike, Chase Elliott might be the first driver to receive two waivers for two different things in one season. One for the 6 races that he missed with the injury, and now most likely one for being suspended this week at Gateway.
You brought up a moment ago about the SMT data and how that was tweeted out by Denny after the race, or after the crash, while the race was going on. Elton Sawyer gave Dave a little more into how they determined that his actions indeed were intentional.
Well, I think, just watching the optics of it immediately from the tower, it's like, wow, that, it would look like a hard left-hand turn into the right rear quarter of the 11, which obviously turned the 11 into the front straightaway wall there head on. So then you, again, as we did last night, again this morning early, throughout the day, you start looking at the data. There was some conversation about maybe a broken toe link on the right rear. And as you look through all that, nothing gave us the indication that on that particular contact with the fourth turn wall gave us any indication that anything was broke by looking at the steer and looking at the in-car camera with hand position on the steering wheel and the way the steering wheel was turned hard to the left. It just supported, what the optics were. And again, that's where we landed on the penalty that we did.
Petey, video and data does not lie.
Well, no offense to everybody, but the Zapruder films are done, right? You could go back frame by frame by frame by frame, and that doesn't show you anything because that could be kind of a ball and a strike when you think about it, depending on how you view something. And we saw a lot of different angles of that on Monday. But when you look at that raw data that Elton just talked about there's really no way that you can defend what Chase Elliott did behind the wheel on Monday.
Yeah, it is very difficult to basically go against what we've seen. There was a portion of Elton's visit with Dave yesterday where while NASCAR doesn't want to get involved, they would like to see this handled amongst the drivers. He gives more context.
We have great racing on our racetrack. We have some of the most phenomenal athletes that are driving these cars. And in the heat of the battle, things happen, but they have to learn to react in a different way. A couple years ago, or a year and a half or so ago, at Las Vegas with the Bubba Wallace incident, and now with Chase, and drivers need to understand you have to handle that in a completely different way than hooking someone in the right rear and putting them in harm's way, not only with just a major head-on collision like Denny had, but also other competitors and putting them themselves as well as other competitors in harm's way.
And I believe that is the overriding theme of this. It is a safety issue. Here again, Elton Sawyer with Dave Moody.
We don't normally, as NASCAR and the sanctioning body, would much rather have our athletes handle this. But when it rises to a level, again, that you've hooked someone in the right rear and you've turned them in the fence, I don't want to keep bringing this up, but you look back at the Bubba incident. Now you look at the one of Chase, and it does put us in a situation as a sanction body that we have to dive into that deeper. We've had instances where drivers get out of the car, they're not happy with each other, they show their displeasure. There's been a little pushing or whatever that may be, or even on the racetrack where there's tire marks and you move somebody out of the way and we move on to the next event. But when these type of instances happen, we're going to take a much deeper dive and get involved, because it's just the safety of the competitors that we have to make sure that we're keeping that at a level that's consistent.
Again, NASCAR Senior VP of Competition, Elton Sawyer, joining Dave Moody yesterday on SiriusXM Speedway. So, with all that Elton has said, with the penalty itself, the reason why why Chase was suspended, what they looked at to arrive at that decision, the waiver that will obviously be applied for, and we'll await the reaction from NASCAR for that. This pretty much seems to be all buttoned up, and I know that they wanted to get this buttoned up before we got past today, so we can all digest this and we can dive into the racing weekend this weekend at Gateway and in Portland for the Xfinity Series.
Well, the byproduct of everything is that Chase Elliott is suspended for this race Sunday at Gateway. Hendrick Motorsports will not appeal that penalty. Corey LaJoie has gotten the call to fill in for Chase Elliott, so he'll drive the 9 car on Sunday. Carson Hocevar will drive the Spire Motorsports number 7 in place of Corey LaJoie. So that was sort of the dominoes that fell after we got the news yesterday that Chase Elliott will be out a week. If I'm a Chase Elliott fan, though, Mike, here's how I look at this. I'm not minimizing this by any means. NASCAR does not hand out one-race suspensions in the Cup Series like candy, right? It's a pretty severe penalty. But at the end of it all, really what it does, it takes away one more chance for Chase Elliott to win a race to make the playoffs. Because with no top 30 rule criteria and him being able to get the waiver, that still stays in place where he's certainly playoff eligible, but now he has one less chance of winning a race. And in my opinion, he's going to have to win a race, because I think he's going to be so far down in the points, he's not going to be able to point his way into the other spots that won't be taken up by drivers that win. So again, I'm not minimizing the penalty. When you get suspended, you got to answer to sponsors, you got to answer to your team owner, all those kinds of things. But literally it boils down to he's got one less shot at getting to victory lane before we wrap up the regular season at Daytona in August.
You mentioned the ripple effect of this, with Chase being sidelined. They tapped into Corey LaJoie to take the reins of the 9, and they tapped into Carson Hocevar to take the reins of the 7. And Carson provided his reaction when all this was said and done.
I woke up this morning just ready to go truck racing this weekend. I was, doing my post race for my Xfinity guys, and was focused on how to get this 42 X Racing Chevy up front at Gateway, and focused on that. And on my way to the shop, got a call from the people at Spire, and that a call I'll forever remember, and super special to be able to even have my name in a hat, let alone just have the conversations, and especially have conversations with Spire, and the relationship they have with Hendrick, and just all. I think it's great for Corey and Spire, as well as, I get to fulfill a childhood dream and go run laps and be a part of the show on Sunday.
That is Carson Hocevar, double dipping now, trucks and Cup for him this weekend at Gateway. And I'm sure that was a call that he wasn't necessarily expecting, but one he's not going to turn down either all at the same time.
Well, no, this is interesting, because a lot of folks, when this came through yesterday, asked me on social media, where's Josh Berry? Well, Josh Berry's in Portland because that's where the Xfinity Series is. So having him do double duty was not going to work out for Hendrick Motorsports. So because the Truck Series is there, and that's the Saturday race at Gateway over the weekend, Carson Hocevar gets the call. It's interesting. Quite honestly, I don't know if he's ready for the Cup Series, but you got to make that first start somewhere, and it comes in some extreme circumstances. So we'll see what Carson does in the 7 car on Sunday afternoon.
And, of course, we will wish Corey LaJoie the best. Remember when he wrote that letter to Mr. Hendrick a long time ago, wanting to drive for him when Jimmy Johnson was retiring? Well, he's going to get his chance to drive a Hendrick Motorsports Chevrolet in a Cup race, and he'll do it in the 9 car this weekend. I'm sure he'll maximize that opportunity, and I'm sure he's got to be excited as all get out.
Well, the Corey side of this story is also really interesting because Corey was on the air here yesterday with Danielle on Track on Tuesdays, as he always co-hosts the show, and his stance was he didn't think that Chase Elliott should have been suspended. He saw it differently. And then I guess as he was doing the show, as it was explained, he got the text saying, hey, by the way, can you fill in for Chase Elliott, the guy you're saying who shouldn't be suspended, because he's going to be suspended on Sunday. So just another layer of this crazy onion that unfolded and got unpeeled yesterday, Baggy.
We are going to talk about this with you at 866 Pit Lane. Your reaction to Chase Elliott being suspended this weekend at Gateway. You'll also hear from Denny Hamlin, also coming up on the show. Bottom of the hour, headline check number 1. Also, you'll have Travis Geisler. He is the competition director at Team Penske. Life must be good in those hallways of Penske these days. Winning the Indianapolis 500 and the Coca-Cola 600, Travis will stop by. Race-winning crew chief for the 600, Jonathan Hassler, will be back by. He'll join us at 8 a.m. in the East. Got the calendar for you at 8:50 this morning. Justin Allgaier, your winner from this past weekend, will join us at 9:30. Alex Bowman will join us at 10. We have a jam-packed show for you here, and we're so glad you're with us on this Wednesday morning, May 31st, 2023.